Assalamu alaikum everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. I'm going to make this video about how to manage stress. So we'll start with what is stress in the first place. You got to keep in mind that stress is not always a bad thing. Stress motivates us to work around solving our problems. It motivates us to do change, to do something. So when the stress has reached a point where it's uncomfortable, our body's natural response is to try to alleviate that stress or to change the situation. Now here is where some people have maladaptive ways of managing stress, whether it's resorting to drugs or alcohol or some sort of bad habits, addictions, doing things to numb the stress that are not helpful. Whether it's mindless scrolling on social media or just passing time in a very unhealthy way. Today's video is about how to manage the stress in a healthy way. So stress is not always a bad thing. It motivates us to change. And when you reframe your thoughts that, to view stress as an acceptable emotion rather than something that you need to eliminate completely, this could be helpful. You can reduce some of the feelings that are associated with stress. And the goal is to manage stress, not fully eliminate it. Some people become very worked up at, they don't want any stress in their life, at all. And if they get a little bit of stress, they overreact or they melt down. They don't know how to handle it. We need some stress in our life, but it needs to be managed. It becomes problematic when when the stress is ongoing and chronic and heightened, and we do nothing about it. So the first tip to manage stress is to keep in mind that stress is not always a bad thing. Tip number 2 is to talk about your problems, even if they won't be solved. Talking about your stresses, even if they don't be solved, even if you don't solve all the problems, it actually releases hormones in the body that reduce negative feelings. Okay, so you will have cortisol in your system, maybe some adrenaline. When you talk about your stresses and the person is offering you a space to talk and they validate you, they listen to you, they offer some emotional support, then this can release some positive hormones that can reduce the negative symptoms of stress. When we talk with our friends about our problems and we're not being judged, we're not being sort of minimized, it can help you solve problems as well. So while you're talking to your friend or your loved one, as we're talking, we usually have our own ideas rolling out as we're talking to them, and that's why talking is very important. It's like flushing it out of your system, and as we're flushing it, we're getting our own ideas and we're getting our own problem solving skills or things to do. And your friend might offer some some support as well. Just remember not to emotionally dump when you're doing this. Emotional dumping is where you don't ask the person, are they free? Do they have a minute or 2 or 10 to be able to listen to your stress? That's one sign of emotional dumping. So you just see someone, you just start talking about all your problems like a bazooka. Like a machine gun, just you start dumping all your problems, and they're probably busy. You haven't asked them permission. If they're there for you, that's a sign of emotional dumping. And also emotional dumping is where the person is trying to get a word in, but you keep on cutting them off. You just want to make it all about you. You're not time respectful about time, so you might just keep on going and going and going, and the person's trying to intervene and say a word, but you keep on telling them to be quiet pretty much, and you want to keep on talking. These are like some signs of emotional dumping. What you need to do is ask the person if they're available, and then when you do speak to them about your stresses, keep a limit with time. And if the other person wants to speak, you also should hear them out as well. Tip number 3 is to prioritize your responsibilities. So focusing on completing the quick tasks first can be helpful. We all can have like a lot of to-do things to do, or a big to-do list, and that can be very stressful. Even if you got all these small things to do, if you just leave them and not action them, or you just sort of put them on the back burner, they can pile up and then turn into stress. So what you can do is just write a to-do list and then place the small tasks first, and then as you go down the list, they can get bigger and bigger, and then quickly knock down the simple and easy task and just cross them off, right? This helps clear up your mind, and then you can focus on the larger responsibilities later. Writing out things, I find, is very, very helpful. You might have a lot in your mind. It's hard to sort of put them in place, and what to do next, what action to do next. Once you write them down, you know what to do. And when you cross them off, it actually helps clear your mind. So that's number 3. Number 4 is to focus on the basics. So stress can start a harmful cycle where the basic needs become neglected, and then that leads to more stress. So you become stuck in a cycle. So you've got the basic needs, you neglect them, you focus on the big stuff, you don't do the big stuff, you don't do the small stuff, you're stuck now in a cycle. So make a point to focus on your basic needs. Basic needs such as eating well, so making sure that you're not sort of overindulging with junk food and late night snacking and emotional eating at night. So eat well, keep a healthy sleep schedule as well. Your sleep hygiene should be good. Making sure you're not having too much caffeine or any caffeine before you go to sleep, at least about 2 hours, 3 hours before you go to sleep. Create a sleep ritual. So, an hour or two before you go to sleep, changing your clothes into your bedtime clothes, your pajamas, or whatever you want to call them. Making a cup of tea, for example. Doing a ritual, whether it's reading, a cup of tea, changing your clothes. This gives your mind or your brain some cues that it's almost bedtime when you do this often. And then it starts to unwind. Your body starts to unwind. Try not to scroll too much on social media, especially 2 hours as well before you go to sleep, because all that information will stay active in your mind and make it harder to go to sleep. So keep a good sleep schedule. Keep a good exercise schedule as well. Just make sure you move your body, 30 minutes a day. Whether it's cardio, whether it's going to the gym, whether it's just home exercise, going for a power walk just to get your heart rate elevated a little bit. This can help manage your stress, and here you're focusing on the basics. So you're not neglecting yourself. And other forms of self-care as well. So making sure that you are taking care of yourself and not putting yourself at the bottom of the list. Tip number 5 is don't over-involve yourself in one aspect of your life. So people who are involved in one aspect of their life and they neglect all other aspects, they often struggle to deal with stress when that area becomes threatened. So, I've worked with a lot of guys who, would be focusing on, let's say, their car, their toy car that they're doing up or whatever. They can become really extreme in working on that. So from, the morning till night or straight after work, he's working on the car till midnight, late hours of the night. And he repeats this and repeats this, and that becomes his focus, neglecting all other things, Or he's trying to get a job. Someone's trying to get a job. So that becomes their focus, neglecting all other things. And then if that thing that they're focusing on doesn't go well, then their whole life crumbles, right? Because they put all their energy and all their focus on this one thing. If something happens with this one thing, whether it's, if we go back to the car example, if it wrecks or something happens or doesn't go as planned or the mechanic said whatever, or if it's trying to get a job, then if you don't get that job, then they feel like they failed, and the stress becomes more and more severe. So it's important to balance your time and your energy between several areas. So, such as your career, your family, yourself, your religion, personal hobbies, friendships. It's important to keep that balance. So if something goes wrong in one area, it's okay. You haven't put all your energy there. So it's important not to just focus on one area. Tip number 6 is to set aside time for yourself. So personal time is very, very, very important. And it usually gets moved to the bottom of the to-do list, or the bottom of the list. When things get hectic, we just chuck it away. We don't even take care of ourselves. We put ourselves last, But if personal time is neglected, everything else will tend to suffer. So your energy will be burnt out. Your fuel tank, so to speak, will be empty, and you won't have the energy to give your time and effort to other areas in your life. So it's important to set a time for yourself, even if it's like 30 minutes a day, just to relax by yourself, children free, spouse free, and just do nothing. Just relax and calm down. Calm yourself down. This can really help you recharge your batteries, so to speak. Tip number 7 is to keep things in perspective. So in the heat of the moment, little problems can feel bigger than they actually are, especially when you've neglected yourself, you've procrastinated tasks. The stress can then feel, enormous, and it starts to accumulate. So taking a step back and think about how important your stressor is in the broader context. A lot of people now I hear in the therapy room, they'll bring up their issue, and then later on they'll be like, but it's not that big. I mean, compared to Palestine, compared to what's going on overseas. I mean, they say that to themselves, and then they sort of put it in perspective, I guess. So just because things are happening in Palestine and around the world, may Allah make it easy for them. I mean, it's horrendous what's happening. But if you are also stressing, the two can be true at the same time. So the Palestinian people, may Allah make it easy for them, are going through their stress, and you could be going through your stress. Thinking about their stress can help you put yours into perspective, but it doesn't mean that you can't be feeling what you're feeling. Both can be true. To think about it in a broader context, you can think about your problem as, you can ask yourself, will this matter in a week? Will this problem matter in a month? Will this problem matter in a year or in 5 years? And really think, mentally and vividly try to imagine yourself in a month's time, in a week's time, in a year's time, looking back at today and see whether, where this stressor fits and whether it'll still be a stressor for you in the future. Other things you can do is to put things in perspective. You can volunteer your time in, with a charity organization, go and feed some poor people, help the needy, drop off some shopping bags to those who are less fortunate, work at a soup kitchen for, 1 day a month. You can go to the hospitals, go to the cancer ward and just visit some people there. You can, there's a lot of people that don't get visitors. I know a lot of brothers that do that. They actually go to the cancer wards and they ask, is there any Muslims here? So there usually be some Muslim nurse or something who can tee it up. And then they go visit people who haven't had visitors in a while. And that makes the sick person, obviously, makes them happy. It's Islamically rewarding. Allah in a hadith says it's as if you visited me. If you visit the sick, it's as if you visited Allah. And angels will ask for forgiveness for you. And also for yourself, it puts things in perspective. When you see these sick people, they've got days to live, etc., etc. Also, take a visit to the grave, the Prophet, peace be upon him, encouraged us to regularly visit graves, to regularly remember death, and that helps put things in perspective. So there's 7 things, 7 tips to manage stress, especially in these days where we live in a very stressful time. I hope you found this video to be helpful. Excuse me. I'll see you next time.